At Magoosh, we've had the honor of getting to know students from many different backgrounds. Although we as a company focus primarily on leveling the playing field for test prep, we know that students are so much more than just a test score. This summer, we're amplifying student voices and highlighting the great work that student activists do all across the country. Make sure to subscribe to hear their inspirational stories as part of our Magoosh Student Voices video series. Hi everyone, I have the pleasure of speaking with Aravind today. He is a high school senior and he works in science, bringing science into the social impact world. So I'm very happy to introduce Aravind. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to show my story and share what I do in my way.
Wonderful. So I guess to start off, tell me a little bit more about the activism that you do.
So the activism I do centers around mental health and neuroscience. So I'm passionate about translating science into social impact, as you mentioned in my introduction. So essentially, one of the biggest problems we have in society today is the lack of adequate access to mental health therapy. Studies have shown that numerous incidents of gun violence, for example, could have been prevented if there was adequate mental health therapy available in communities around our country and around the world. So my activism primarily centers around increasing access to that mental health therapy and making sure that people have access to the care that they need in order to prevent these incidents of violence and to create a more positive society overall.
That's wonderful and so important. How did you get started with this work?
So this activism started with my interest in neuroscience. My interest in neuroscience started actually when I was 6 years old. I went to the Liberty Science Center, which is a science museum in New Jersey, and there I dissected a banana. So it was like a simulation of a surgery on the banana. After that, in the same year, I actually got glasses. When I got glasses, I thought I would be ostracized by my classmates. I thought I would be made fun of. But in fact, that ophthalmologist was the person who inspired me to pursue medicine. I love the way that he interacted with patients, love the way that he integrated science and medicine with the humanities in the practice that he did. And by learning more about vision and ophthalmology, I entered into neuroscience and explored the diverse world that neuroscience is, connecting biology with diverse fields like psychology, sociology, even economics and politics. So neuroscience has been my love ever since that. And I wanted to find out how I can make a positive impact on society using my love of neuroscience. And I saw that studies have shown that mental health therapy is severely lacking in communities around our nation and around the world. So this is the origin of my activism in this area.
Wow, so you really came across this area when you were at a very early age, just 6 years old. Tell me about, from that time going through elementary and then middle school up until high school, how has your journey through neuroscience, how has that changed over time as you've become a young adult?
So over time, I've gone more from learning to doing. So in my younger ages, I learned neuroscience by reading books, by attending classes, by attending lectures. But as I grew older into middle school and high school, I learned that I could have a tangible impact on society, whether in the lab or in communities, creating positive changes. In the lab, I've worked on scientific experiments, creating novel innovations in the field of biology and neuroscience. As I grew older, I found out that I could impact communities in a positive way. In my Eagle projects, for example, I benefited a local equine-assisted psychotherapy institution in order to expand the provision of mental health therapy that they give to at-risk teens and veterans suffering from PTSD. So I've learned that as I've grown older, I have the ability to make positive impact in society and not just learn, but actually do and translate into positive change the actions and lessons that I learned when I was younger.
That's fantastic. So you mentioned an Eagle project. I take it you're also an Eagle Scout then?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I've been a Boy Scout for more than 10 years now. And as you know, Eagle Scout is the highest rank in Boy Scouts. On top of an Eagle Scout, I have a gold palm and a bronze palm, which indicates that I've gone above the requirements of a normal Eagle Scout. And for my Eagle project, I can elaborate a bit more on that. So I raised over $5,000 for a local equine-assisted psychotherapy institution called Spring Rains of Life. And their approach to mental health therapy is unique. So they use horses, hence the name equine-assisted, to teach at-risk teens, veterans with PTSD, and other groups suffering from mental health illnesses how to make positive change in their own lives. So by interacting with these horses, they learn the interpersonal interactions that they may have lost their skills from suffering from these mental illnesses. So because of this, the unique work that this institution is doing, I wanted to make sure that they have the resources they need to be able to make this positive impact in the community. And therefore, for my Eagle project, I raised awareness about mental health issues and mental health therapy through a walkathon in my community and a music night that I held, as well as donating this money to this institution and improving their facilities so that they can increase the therapy that they can give to people. And for this project, I was recognized by the New Jersey State Assembly and Senate, and specifically from Assemblyman Roy Fryman, and have aimed to work with politicians and legislators in the future to make sure that we implement increased access to mental health therapy, not only in New Jersey, but in the whole nation and perhaps the world at large.
That's fantastic. It sounds like you've made a ton of impact and that you've been able to convince legislators to really pay attention to what's going on in their community in terms of mental health as well. So in your perspective and your own words, what is student activism?
So student activism is using the resources one has to make tangible, positive change in people's communities, whether that be your neighborhood, your town, your city, your nation, or even the world. It doesn't have to be something that impacts our global society. It can be something that impacts your own local community. So essentially, student activism is taking what you have and creating positive change in whatever group of people that surrounds you, however large that may be. It's involving the translation of passion into action. So in my case, I had a passion for neuroscience and mental health, and I translated this into the action of expanding access to mental health therapy for those that need it, to solve the problem of increasing violence and rancor in our society. And it also involves leading people to solve a problem. In my case, that's the lack of mental health therapy. So rallying people together and making a change in whatever society and whatever size of society that you see yourself in.
That's fantastic. I really love thinking about how to turn passion into action. That's a great way of thinking about it. What inspires you to keep doing the work that you're doing?
So as I mentioned before, neuroscience has been my love ever since that time when I was 6 years old and had that fake surgery on a banana. So neuroscience has so many paths that I can explore, and social impact is one of them that I enjoy. I'm inspired because I can make positive change using my passion, which there's nothing better in life, right? So I'm inspired by the fact that I'm able to make tangible impact in people's lives by expanding access to mental health therapy. Not only am I increasing the quality of life for people that suffer from mental illnesses, but I'm also ensuring that society stays safe by perhaps preventing things like gun violence and other issues that can arise by the lack of access to mental health therapy. After my Eagle project, I actually began leading Simply Neuroscience, which is an international student-run nonprofit organization focused on these issues of neuroscience and psychology, education, outreach, and awareness. So along with the education aspect of neuroscience, one important initiative of our organization is this aspect of increasing access to mental health therapy. So the legislation team is working with politicians in order to convince them to expand access to therapy in healthcare policies and to make sure that communities have access to these resources for people. I'm inspired by the fact that so many other people have joined my mission and that there is positive change that I can continue to make in society.
Wow, that's very, very impressive. Tell me a little bit more about how you started your own organization and how, again, translating passion to action. How did you form the organization? How did you get others involved?
So Simply Neuroscience is a passion project of mine. It's grown into an organization that has been far greater than I ever imagined in the beginning. Simply Neuroscience it has been a outlet for me to create positive change using my passion of neuroscience. So the reason why I've been leading this organization and been making the change through this platform is that there are so many potential ways that I can use neuroscience to impact communities and impact societies, and that's why that explains the mission of Simply Neuroscience and what we do.
Fantastic. So you described it as your passion project. Obviously, you're entering your senior year in high school and you've been doing this work for some time. How do you balance academic responsibilities, being an Eagle Scout, running your organization, and I'm sure a host of other things as well?
So the most important thing that I would recommend to anyone is to make sure that things are done efficiently. There are many things that we waste time on. One common example is on your electronic devices and social media. If you look at your screen time on your iPhone, for example, it shows that you may spend 6-7 hours on social media. Not to get it wrong, social media has positive impact that you can make with it, but you shouldn't be wasting your time just passively scrolling through other people's feeds. Make sure that you are using your time to make the change you wish to see, whether that be through a nonprofit organization, scientific research, or any other outlet. Just make sure that you're doing what you want to do, and making sure that the actions that you're doing have tangible impact on society.
Great advice for really anybody who has an electronic device. So as you're entering your senior year of high school, I'm curious what that looks like for you at your school. Is your school in-person, distance learning, hybrid? And how does that also affect how you're thinking about your activism work?
Yeah, so I go to a large public high school in central New Jersey. And as you can imagine, the density of students is fairly high in the school. So in order to keep things safe because of the COVID-19 pandemic, for now, at least for the first month, everything is completely virtual. The administrators are thinking of transferring to a hybrid option potentially later on. But obviously that has put a dent or has some impact on the plans that I had. In fact, I've taken COVID-19 and used it to expand my opportunities. I'm now spending more time actually than before on my projects, whether that be my nonprofit, Simply Neuroscience. I've been able to spend more time doing things like organizing conferences with thousands of students around the world, organizing competitions, organizing outreach efforts to communities to expand mental health therapy. So that has definitely been an opportunity that has opened up because of this virtual learning environment. I've also been able to expand other projects that I've had. For instance, I've used COVID-19 to do computational biology research. This July, I did research to identify potential therapies for COVID-19 by researching small molecules that bind to proteins from SARS-CoV-2. So COVID-19 is essentially the impetus behind this research project, and it has allowed this research to burgeon. So COVID-19, obviously, it has potential very prominent detrimental impacts on society, devastating impacts. But for those that are able to, and such as me, I would highly recommend to use the opportunities that you have and make sure that you're translating this devastating situation into something that creates new opportunities and new avenues for you to explore your interests.
Wow, that sounds like you've really taken a stressful situation and made it into one where you're learning and growing and contributing back to society. How do college applications look for you this year with everything being virtual?
Definitely, college applications have been affected. For example, I'm not able to meet face-to-face with teachers and counselors to get recommendation letters, to get advice on my essays, things like that, that previous years of students have been able to benefit from. However, I've been able to organize virtual meetings, things like that, operating within the constraints of the current situation we have. And other impacts of COVID-19 on college applications have included the fact that some colleges have made changes in the application process. For example, standardized testing is, for instance, not always required by all the colleges. Some essays have been taken out or modified. So there are definitely new things to consider in college applications this year, some of which take some stress off the application process and others of which perhaps add more complications. But ultimately, that's the reality of the society we live in and something that I need to learn to operate around.
Right. There's certainly been a lot of changes this year, and it seems like adapting is going to be a key thing to kind of getting through it and thriving. How are you thinking about including your activism work as you apply to college, and how does that part of your life kind of come through in your application process?
Yeah, so the two big factors where you can talk about your activism work, and specifically in my case, the mental health advocacy and neuroscience, in my essays and in my interviews. The activities list and my transcript can only show so much, but I am talking about simply neuroscience and my mental health advocacy, my essays, and I plan to do so in my interview. And by doing so, I am not only demonstrating my passion for this subject, but also humanizing myself. I'm not just a list of grades or list of quantitative metrics. I'm a person that's passionate about the subject, and I'm able to translate that through my interviews and through my essays.
Great. Yeah, it's the holistic picture of who are you, for sure. What are your future aspirations?
Yeah, so in the future, one of my biggest goals is to become a physician scientist. So a physician scientist integrates the clinical and research aspects of medicine, something called translational medicine. Specifically, I want to enter into the neuroscience aspect of this. So researching neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, and translating that into tangible therapies for patients in clinics and hospitals. So that's definitely one avenue that I'm excited about. I plan to pursue an MD PhD after my undergraduate studies to help me go on that route of integrating the clinical and research aspects of medicine. I also hope to continue my social impact work through continuing my work with Simply Neuroscience, as well as potential other avenues, expanding access to mental health therapy through my advocacy in communities is something that I'm passionate about and something that I hope to do in the future as well. I also have a passion for public policy. I'm an avid member of Model UN, Model Congress, and the whole debate ecosystem. And I enjoy integrating science and public policy, again, translating those things, those experiments in the lab to tangible social impact. So I hope to potentially have a position in the future where I can influence health policy and public health policy in order to bring about the changes I wish to see in mental health, therapy, and other aspects of healthcare that I hope to implement in the future.
That's wonderful, and it sounds like you have a very, very bright future ahead. Thinking to some of the mentors and people who have really helped shape who you are, is there anyone that you want to call out or give a shout out to?
Definitely. As they say, everyone stands on the shoulders of giants. So nothing I've done would have been possible without all of my mentors. One of my most important mentors is my research advisor for my research project, in which I'm developing a novel assay for endotoxins, which are the toxic molecule on bacteria. So to give a brief background on this project, currently endotoxin assays are made from the blood of horseshoe crabs, which are a common species on the Atlantic and Pacific coastal ecosystems. But the harvesting of these crabs is causing substantial environmental damage. So I wanted to make a solution that prevents the environmental decline of the Jersey Shore that I love. So I entered into this research project. I devised a solution to genetically modify a plant called Arabidopsis thaliana to luminesce at different intensities based on the quantity of endotoxin applied to it. And endotoxin testing is used to screen for potential contamination on medical devices and medicines prior to being used on patients. So that's the background of this project. And I would like to thank my research mentor, my PI in that lab at Rutgers University, in which I do this project. Of course, nothing would have been complete without my friends and family who continue to support me throughout all my endeavors, whether that be my mental health advocacy, my nonprofit work, my research, even just schoolwork. So shout out to them as well. My Boy Scout leaders obviously made my whole Eagle project possible. taught me so much throughout my over decade-long journey in Boy Scouts and continue to be an inspiration for me as I move forward into the future. I also serve as a volunteer EMT, so I would like to thank all of my fellow EMT crew who serve with me on Friday and Saturday nights and helping out patients in my local community. I also play in the New Jersey Symphony Orchestra, youth orchestra. So I would also like to extend my appreciation to all of my mentors and conductors in that group as well. So I have so many people to thank, and none of this would have been possible without all of my mentors and inspirations in my life.
Oh, that's so wonderful. And it's so great to also see so many different parts of your life. It sounds like you're making a great impact in many different areas. So for students out there watching this video and thinking, oh, wow, that's a lot. How do I get there? How do I even get started with student activism? What are some tips that you would give?
Just start small. You just need to make that first small step in order to translate into bigger actions. Every prominent activist, every prominent person in any field just starts with a small action. Just because you see people in the news, on TV, that are making these global impacts doesn't mean that they started by making that global impact. You need to find a passion that you have. For, in my case, it's mental health advocacy and mental health therapy, and start at a small scale. So I first started at my community level through my Eagle project, and then translated that into now a global nonprofit. So by starting at a small scale, you can both gain experience and practice in the field that you want to go into, and also be able to have this progression of positive impact that you can continue to build upon. You have to make sure you keep questioning and honing your approach. So in science, you cannot just keep going on a path that you know is wrong. Same thing with social activism. You have to continue gathering evidence and metrics of how you're impacting society and honing your approach about your social impact to make sure that you're most positively impacting communities. You also need to make sure you have a team that can support you. No person or no leader can make an actual tangible impact on a large community without a team to support them. So you need to make sure that you translate your passion into leadership. Lead a team that can help you and support you as you move towards your social impact. So ultimately, there are numerous issues in society today that we need to address. And surely you can find something that you're passionate about and make an impact in. So ultimately, start small and you can grow big with whatever aspects of society you want to improve.
Thank you so much, Aravind. This has been such a pleasure getting to know you better, all of your pursuits, and I feel like I learned so much from learning about crabs on the Jersey Shore to some of your the people who have inspired you and mentored you. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed talking about my work and hope to have inspired more people to have their own positive impacts on society.